take a 20-14 lead. Under 6 minutes to go. Seattle down by 5. Their drive, they're trying to get in there and find a way to take the lead. Clay Matthews, John Vilma, is going to get called for a penalty right here.
You might as well just put yellow jerseys on the quarterback so that no one ever touches them, because everything is a penalty. Clay Matthews didn't even lead with his head, leads with the shoulder, doesn't touch him anywhere in the shoulder helmet area, and it's still a penalty that led to a touchdown, which ultimately lost the game for the Rams.
Here comes the touchdown. It's on a 4th and goal from the 5-yard line. Russell Wilson, as he always does, escaping the pressure and finding a wide open Chris Carson, who almost drops it, but he hangs on. Seahawks go for the 2 and they don't get it, so they've got a 30-29 lead. So that's a question for Jared Goff. Did he have the answer? This in a stretch where over the last 2 games he's thrown 117 passes. On a 3rd down and 10 here, this is one of the good ones that he throws. Gerald Everett should catch that. He doesn't. It's picked off. It is initially ruled incomplete. Seahawks challenge. Ultimately, it's overturned. It's an interception.
Look, that's his athletic and aware of play again. You saw him all over the football field last night. Here you have Tedrick Thompson. Look, he's sliding away from the football, puts on the brakes, gets his hands on the ground so he can then just kind of juggle it to himself. And that's a spectacular football.
So Seattle can ice the game on a 3rd down, but Bobby, this is the play they run.
I'm not a huge fan of the option, but even a less of a fan of Russell Wilson pitching. I guarantee you Pete Carroll's blood pressure was through the roof, almost turning it over.
So it gives the Rams another chance, and this time they've got it moving. That's Everett who holds on. It's a 28-yard gain. They're in field goal range. Greg, the leg, Zerline. He'd made one from 47 earlier. This one with 15 seconds left and 44 yards for the win. Oh, it misses by that much. An NFL game decided by that much. One that you will remember perhaps late in the season, because these are 2 good teams in the same division. In the end, Pete Carroll is ecstatic. The Rams are devastated. The Seahawks, a 1-point win at home.
I thought Russell played one of the best games I've ever seen him play. I just have never seen him have so much, speaking of magic, in him.
Best game I ever played. I left it all on the field. I left it all out in the field. Coach and I were just talking about that. It was one of the best, I think. I think, though, guys were making plays like crazy tonight.
We have a hungry group. Like, these wins are going to continue to feed us so that we can be able to keep going and keep going. We still haven't seen what we're capable of. We've seen the things that we've accomplished, but there's so much ahead that we could be able to do.
Well, and look at Russell Wilson and just look at how many times we have the word best on the screen, and that pretty much tells you the story. He is having his best year. They're 4-1. One of the times they did that in his career before they wound up winning the Super Bowl in 2013. And this is a team that certainly, I think, has its sights set that high this year. And if I were to tell you right now we lived in a world in which Patrick Mahomes was not eligible, would anyone at this table right now pick Russell Wilson to be the leading candidate for MVP of the league?
Sure. When you look at those yards per attempt, completion percentage, I mean, he's pushing. These are not dink and dunk passes where guys are then getting catch and run yards. Russell's pushing the ball down the field, and he's doing it a lot of times without optimal protection. And the running game is not where it was back in the beast mode days. So he's doing a lot of this stuff simply off of his own skill level and his own just extraordinary talent. I mean, it reeks of MVP, no question about it.
Mark, let's expand on the point we made during the highlight, which is the rarity that Russell Wilson throws a pass that looks like it's on schedule. He's running around and making plays out of nothing out there.
If it's not quick game, meaning catch the ball in the gun, 1 step, and the ball's out, if it's drop back or if it's play action, he is on the move. Everything's off schedule, and you can't get your hands, or you just can't get him to the ground. Everybody touches him, but nobody can bring him. They can't corral him, and it's making it tough on the defense. How are you going to cover somebody for 6 seconds?
Well, you want to know why everyone's so hard on Jared Goff and why everyone's so hard on Dak? Because when you pay your quarterback franchise money and he becomes the highest paid player at his position, you can't pay everybody else. So you know what he has to do? He has to make up for a bad offensive line at times. He has to make up for a lack of a running game. He has to buy time and find receivers down the field and make those plays. And when Seattle transitioned a couple years ago from a defense and a team that plays defense and runs the ball, it all went on Russ. And you saw last night what he was able to do. He saddled up and rode his team to victory.
I'm just going to say this interestingly. You brought up Jared Goff. The past 2 weeks, The kid, although he's thrown 117 passes, he's been lights out.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, he's done pretty well. This defense is what is letting down that football team.
Yeah, I'm going to get to the Rams in
had
just
the
a
game won,
second, but as far as Wilson is concerned, when you got a guy running around back there like that, and he can make the throw running right, he can make the throw running left, what are you doing with him defensively?
You're trying to limit one way or the other. So what we would do when we played against the Seahawks and Russell Wilson, we would make sure that we know he's going one way. So we're going to flush with three defensive linemen, flush him out to the left or flush him out to the right. So at least now we can defend that half of the field, because it's too hard for a guy like Russell Wilson to sit there and continue to scramble and extend. Him, Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, those guys are much more comfortable when they're outside of the pocket, when they're extending the down, and it makes it too hard for the defense. So we make sure to flush him out.
He's just playing on another level right now for a guy who has been an upper echelon quarterback for a long time. He's taken it to a new place. Now let me talk about the Rams, and let's talk about Jared Goff. Sort of an up and down night for Los Angeles last night. Goff threw for 395 yards and a touchdown. He did have a turnover for the 5th straight game, so that's obviously a problem they need to clean up. But they're certainly asking a lot of him. Todd Gurley, not a really busy night. Now, he did have his 15th career game with multiple rushing touchdowns. That passes Eric Dickerson for the most in Rams history, but he's still not been the workhorse, and the defense gave up 30 points after giving up 55 to the Bucs on Sunday. So that's 85 points they've allowed in the last 2 games at a time where Goff, and we'll say it again, has thrown 117 passes in the last 2 games.
Yeah, but it doesn't start with Goff. It starts with Gurley. It starts with the running game and the offensive line. And I see, 1, the offensive line not as good as they were. 2, I don't see the same Todd Gurley that I saw at Georgia when he put his foot in the ground and he hit the hole. You were like, man, when he came out in the draft, it was Todd Gurley running back and then all the other running backs. He was clearly the best running back.
So why?
At the time.
Is this the way the game is being dictated to them, or is something wrong?
Well, no. I saw that McVay and the offense put an effort to give him the ball early. I don't think that they saw the production that they were hoping for from Todd Gurley, so they go to the passing game. The passing game is working. It's effective. Goff is doing a great job, so they continue with it. And unfortunately, as the game goes on, it's easy for us to sit here in a room watching and saying, oh, you should run the ball more. It goes too fast when you get in the rhythm.
In the first half, they ran the ball pretty well. 9 carries, 38 yards, and a touchdown. The problem is they kind of went away from that, and really his only carry in the second half of significance was the touchdown. Outside, they got stymied. Their offensive line wasn't opening up holes, and this team is starting to remind me of the Saints from a couple years ago when Drew Brees would go throw for 5,000 yards. They'd run the ball okay. They weren't playing defense. They were putting it all on their quarterback. And it's not a winning recipe. It looks great for Jared Goff in the box score, but it doesn't translate to wins. It's not about numbers. It's about letters, and the W's are what you want.
So let's sort of wrap up this conversation with that thought. Jared Goff, he's got the huge contract. You just made the point. You need to be able to sort of ride your quarterback to wins when you have to, and Russell Wilson has proven he can do that. Do you think Jared Goff is developed into a guy who can lead this team deep into the playoffs this year with its flaws?
I think he can do his part. But, see, the defense right now is so suspect. If they do not turn it around. Look, Jameis Winston absolutely carved this defense apart. Wade Phillips is going to have to do his part to get the secondary to play much better, challenge people to the line of scrimmage much more. Sean McVay is going to have to say, hey, look, even if I'm averaging 3-4 yards a pop and I'm not breaking the 15, 20-yard plays, it's still going to benefit Jared to run this football, because play action, you will then create that natural separation between second and third level more so.
Agree.
But the offensive line right now, look, anytime they get stuck for a negative run, play callers go, well, throw that one out. Throw that one out.
And let's not forget, by running the ball, you control the clock.
Exactly.
You keep that defense that's getting a little bit older, you keep them off the field. So they're
They were on the field a lot.
Clock management is
They were on
key.
the field a lot last night, and they were on the field for long plays.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they're running all over the field trying to chase down the receiver that Russ is finding.
Which is
off schedule.
A quick final thought on that, because whether they're trying to preserve Gurley for later in the season, which I've heard suggested, or whatever reason, you don't buy that.
No, I don't buy that at all. No.
It came out running.
Something's wrong with him then. You cannot give that guy as few touches as he's getting.
Correct. Something is wrong with Gurley and the offensive line. And I'm not going to speculate injuries because they're not talking about injuries. But when I watch Gurley make cuts and hit the hole, it is not the same effort, explosion that he's had before in the past.
Okay, I have to run here. We have so much stuff going on this Football Friday. We have a great player who looks like he's about to get traded. And that player is Vikings receiver Stefon Diggs. He was back at practice yesterday. That was a day after his absence from practice fueled speculation that he wants to be traded. And so then he meets with the media. And I tell you what, he did not shut down the trade talk. Listen to this.
I feel like there's truth to all rumors, you know? I mean, no matter how you dress it up, I won't be saying nothing on it. I won't be speaking on it at all. But there is truth to all rumors, I guess.
Have you asked for a trade?
I haven't communicated anything. More so, the conversation I have has only been about team and trying to have success on the field. I can't sit up here and act like everything is okay, because it's obviously not. But what I can say is, at this point, just trying to work through it.
Okay, so let's get to the bottom of what's going on here. Stefon Diggs, at the end of the day, is upset because he's a genuinely great receiver on a team where they are running the football and playing defense.
Yeah.
And look, we can beat around the bush if we want to, but at the end of the day, the finger's going to get pointed at the quarterback they gave a fortune of money to. What are we seeing right now from Kirk Cousins?
We're watching Kirk Cousins revert back to when he was a rookie. He's missing reads, he's inaccurate, and frankly, that's the reason that they're going to miss the playoffs. When you talk about simple play-action passes back to the quarterback, and then as soon as he turns back around, he should see the single high safety and then man by Clinton Diggs. So that tells you, run the over route, and what frees up is Thielen right here on this dig route. Instead, he's automatically predetermining the throw to the running back. He missed a 20-yard gain. That is something you can't do as an $84 million quarterback. Then, to start the game, script the first 15 plays, you take your shot, especially on a great defense. You don't get too many shots like this. So Kirk Cousins, nothing but time. This is 7-on-7. You cannot miss this throw. Look at this. Stefon Diggs is saying touchdown.
Yeah.
That should be a touchdown. Any quarterback should make that with the time he had. If that's going to continue to happen, Kirk Cousins and Minnesota, they're going to miss the playoffs, and it's going to be because of the quarterback.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. There was a lot of debate when he went there initially anyway about whether or not he actually was going to be the difference between he and Case Keenum when Case couldn't get him over the hump in the NFC Championship against the Eagles.
Yep.
Many people in Washington, many people who watch football who are very astute as far as quarterback play said, this guy is a manager. He is not a difference maker. He's not going to elevate other people. And as a matter of fact, you're seeing him have the opposite effect, both on the players and the coaches' mentality up there.
And speaking of the psychology of this, Mark, I want to ask you a question because we had Kirk Cousins this week talk about he was apologizing to Adam Thielen, and there was a lot of attention here and other places. He says he's not listening to the criticism and all that sort of thing. But when it's coming from inside, like when his receivers are obviously frustrated with him, if you're the quarterback and your receivers are so frustrated that you have to apologize to one publicly and the other guy wants to be traded, how does the quarterback rectify that?
The optics look bad. What they need is a coming out party. What they need is a game where he throws for 350 yards and they both get a couple touchdowns. Is that likely with the way they've kind of shifted their system now? I don't necessarily see that happening. But Kirk is a good player. He got that big contract. It was a timing thing, right? He was the best available guy at that time.
Right.
So when you sign that big deal, people want the Jared Goff numbers. They want the special plays from Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's necessarily Kirk's game.
Well, so let's just be clear about what we're talking about. They are coaching the game like they don't have the confidence in him, right? You're seeing that.
No,
I think there's.
So that's not what's happening.
Okay.
Zimmer wants to run the ball first. His recipe has always been defense and run the ball. They brought Kirk Cousins in and said, you now have to open up your offense. And he said, this is not what I do. When you guys hired me as a head coach, you brought me in to run the ball, play good defense, and have a game man.
So when you hear that, you know what this sounds like once again? This is, again, how to screw up player personnel acquisition.
Right. Yes.
Okay?
Exactly.
When you're not on the same page. Because, look, sometimes, and I'm not saying this is the case in Minnesota, but let's just look at this from the outside in. Sometimes personnel people and or ownership look at players on other football teams and they watch your show and they watch primetime and they go, I want that guy on my team because look at the plays that he's making there. But they don't bother to philosophically marry that up with, hey, coach, how do you want to do things? Because quite honestly, if the coach starts talking to them, they don't really understand what he's saying anyway. They just see the highlights.
Yeah.
So they go, I'm going to get that.
I'll give you the contrast right here. Brian Schottenheimer. He was my coordinator.
Right.
Did I do the same thing that Russell Wilson does? No, that wasn't my game.
Right.
He's adapted his system to his players. Some coaches want the control. If I'm going to cook you dinner, I want to go get the ingredients. But if that's not the case, that's not the case. You got to put your players in the best position based on their ability. Yeah. It's not happening there.
So at the end of the day, is Stefon Diggs going to get traded? And if so, What's someone going to give up for him? If Amari Cooper fetched a #1 pick of a first-round draft pick, is Stephon Diggs worth that?
Yeah, I could see someone doing that for him. Look, this is a guy who's low 4.4 40, tremendous run after the catch skills, and he can play all three positions. He can play the Z, X, or the E. He can play wherever you want him to. So it all depends upon what the need is. Look, in Washington right now, you think Dwayne Haskins or any other quarterback wouldn't say, we'd like to see 14 on our football team? Absolutely. You absolutely would. Here's the thing, though. Will ownership up there, will the people who are high up in the power structure say, hey, look, we're going to shut this down because we're not stupid.
They're going to shut it down.
We can't let guys like this go.
Don't let them walk out of the building.
You can't let guys like this go.
Okay, so we will leave it there for the moment on the football because there's a lot more to get to, and we will. But we had huge drama bordering on controversy last night in Game 1 of the NLDS between the Cardinals and the Braves, and I want you to watch Ronald Acuna Jr. For those who don't know him, this kid's 20 years old, and he is a superstar. He has as much talent as any player in the sport right now. In the bottom of the 7th, with his team up 3-1 and the base is empty, he hits that ball off the wall and doesn't get anywhere near second. Candidly, this should be closer to a triple than a double, but because he is watching it. I don't know if he thinks it's getting out or if he thinks it's getting foul, but one way or another, he needed to get down the baseline faster, and he doesn't. As a consequence, he does not wind up scoring in the inning, and that becomes critical because now we go to the 9th, and the game is tied at 3, and the bases are loaded with 1 out for Marcell Ozuna. And that's a base hit up the left field side. That's his first career playoff game, and that is a 2-run shot. The Cardinals take a 5-3 lead. They would add 2 more, and so they would take a 7-3 lead to the bottom of the 9th. Was that going to be all she wrote? Well, the Braves weren't going down easy. After a leadoff walk, it's Acuna again. He actually had a big night at the plate. That's a 2-run home run. And so now it's 7-5, and his team has a chance, but he made the huge mistake, and his team is still losing. So should he be doing this as he's running around the bases? A lot of people probably will think he shouldn't be. Either way, Freddie Freeman would hit a home run. It would be 7-6. They'd have a chance with Nick Markakis, but he goes down looking. And the Cardinals take Game 1 7-6, and everyone was talking when it was done.
He should have been on second. And we're kind of shorthanded to do anything about it right there. You hate to see that happen.
It's frustrating, but I think you have that conversation once. Become a dead horse, kind of beat the dead horse after, you know, if you keep having that same conversation over and over again. I mean, you got to know that was a mistake. So that can't happen in the playoffs. Can't happen in the regular season. So unfortunately, that happened tonight.
Hay peloteros que siempre salen a dar lo mejor de él y a veces siempre cometen errores porque uno es ser humano, ¿me entiendes?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of baseball players who give their best effort all the time, but you know, one kind of gets away from them. You know, we're human. We make errors.
So that was obviously the story last night. Eduardo, I'd like to just give you the floor. I have a minute here. What is your takeaway from what we saw last night with this hugely talented player?
I paid attention a lot to what Brian Snitker said, and he took his time. He paused. And when you pause as a manager or anyone that's on a podium, you want to say other things, but you have to be careful the way you say it. And that pause right there, he wanted to take Ronald Acuna Jr. out of the game, just like he did in August. But he couldn't because of the lack of players that he had on the bench. But you want to be consistent as a manager. Brian Snitker has been consistent as a manager for years in the Braves organization, and that's all he knows how to do is play the game the right way. And this right here, when you have a kid that is signed to a long-term deal, $100 million on the table, and he's not playing the game hard the right way, that right there is what hurts Brian Snitker and the clubhouse. You need the clubhouse to be all in one piece. He has to apologize to the team. He has to play the right way. My concern in all of this also is Ronald Acuna Jr., after he hits a home run in the last inning, it still doesn't even tie the game or put the game up. And you're down 2, and Ronald Acuna Jr. is still showboating around the bases. Man, that cannot happen. I need him running all out. I'm not saying all out, but at least, come on, give me effort running around the bases and take it serious according to what the score is of that game.
Now, that's a point extremely well made. Eduardo, thank you so much for doing this morning.
You got it.
It's great to see you as always. Meanwhile, coming up here on a very busy Friday with us on Get Up, what does it take to stop Patrick Mahomes? Bobby Carpenter